Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. It was just outlets. Instead of high cheekbones, brown eyes, and a cute puckered mouth, there was a completely flat metallic surface full of holes. My boyfriend's face looked like a wall fixture, or maybe the back of a TV. I screamed and staggered against the bathroom's towel rack. "Oh, Beth, God!" My boyfriend's voice came through a tiny speaker on his outlet face. He grabbed a fleshy oval he was drying in the sink and pressed it against his head. I could hear a snap and click as he thumbed his cheeks. Within seconds, his face was attached like normal, or at least as normal as it could appear after such a horrific reveal. "So sorry you had to see me like that." I turned and fled. Out of instinct more than anything, I ran to our kitchen and grabbed a knife. The cold handle stayed glued to my palm. Beth, calm down, please." My boyfriend emerged with outstretched, cautious hands. No need to overreact. He stayed away from the glint of my knife. "Where's Tim?" I said, looking right into my boyfriend's eyes. "What did you do with Tim?" "Beth, relax. I am Tim. I've always had this." He gestured behind his jawbones. I could see little divots where his face had just connected. Little divots I had always thought were just some old acne scars. "I'm really sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have told you as soon as I found out." What the fuck was he talking about? Found out what? That I'm not technically, that I'm not fully organic. The words froze me in place. Out of all the possible phrases he could have uttered, I really did not like the sound of not fully organic. He nodded wordlessly several times. "I know it's awkward. I should have told you sooner, but as you might guess, it's not exactly the easiest thing to share." I stared for a long moment at this hunched-over, wincing, apologetic person who claimed to be my boyfriend. I pointed at him with the knife. "Explain." "I will, but first, why don't we put the blade away? Let's calm ourselves. Let's sit down." "You sit down," although visibly a little frightened of my knife. He looked and behaved as Tim always did. His eyes still had the same shine. His lips still curled and puckered in that typical Tim way. If I hadn't seen him faceless a moment ago, I wouldn't have doubted his earnestness for a second. But I had seen him faceless, and now a primal, guttural impulse told me I couldn't trust him. He has a plug face. He has a plug face. "I'll go sit down." Tim raised his arms cooperatively. He grabbed one of our fold-out chairs and seated himself on the far end of our living room. "Here, I'll sit here and give you lots of space." I unlocked the door to our apartment and stood by the front entrance. My hand still clutched the small paring knife in his direction. "It's a very warranted reaction," Tim said. "I get it. Truly I do. But it doesn't have to be this uncomfortable, Beth. I'm not a monster. I promise I'm still the same me. I'm not going to hurt you." I aimed the stainless steel at him without quivering. "Just explain." He gave a big long inhale, followed by an even longer sigh, as if doing so could somehow deflate the intensity of the situation. "Okay, I'll try my best to explain. It's a whole lot I've uncovered over the last while, and I don't really know where to begin. But I'll start with the basics. First of all, we aren't real." I scoffed. I couldn't help myself. "We? Well, I don't fully know about you yet. I suspect you're artificial as well. but definitely me. I have fully confirmed that I'm a fake. Goosebumps ran down my neck. With my free hand, I touched the area behind my jawline. I couldn't feel any indents. I've never had any indents there. A fake? I asked. A fake. A null. I'm not a real living person. I've been programmed with just enough memories to make it feel like I'm a carpenter in my early 30s. But really I'm just background filler. Some sort of synthetic bioroid. Every word he said coiled a wire in my stomach. There's a couple of others I discovered online. Tim pulled out his phone. Fakes, I mean. Their situations are similar to ours. It's always a young couple sharing a brand new apartment. One they can't possibly afford. He let the word hang. What do you mean? I said. We can afford our apartment. Beth, I've never worked a day in my life. What are you talking about? Tim steepled his hands and brought them over his face. I've set GoPros in my clothing. I've recorded where I've gone. After I put on my overalls and wave you goodbye, I take the elevator to our garage. But instead of going to P1 where our car is parked, I actually go down to P4 and lock myself up inside a locker. What? Something overrides my consciousness and I sleep standing for hours. I'm talking like a full 8-hour workday, plus some buffer for any fictional traffic. Then my memory is wiped. What? My memory is wiped and replaced with a false memory of having worked in some construction yard with my crew. And then that's what I relay to you when I return home. That's all I remember. It's as simple as that. The goosebumps on my neck wouldn't relent. That can't be real. Can't be real. He stood up from his chair and pointed at the sides of his head. My whole face comes off Beth. I squeezed my eyes closed and bit my tongue. I bit harder and harder, praying it could wake me up out of this impossibility. But there was nothing to wake up from. Do you want me to show you again? Tim asked. No, I said. Please don't. I don't want to see it. Of course you don't. It's disturbing. I know. I'm a clockwork non-human who's been given the illusion of life. It's fucked. When I opened my eyes again, Tim was sitting again with his head in his palms, clutching at tufts of his hair. And do you know why they built us? Do you know why we exist? His voice turned shrill. I swallowed a warm wad of copper and realized my teeth had punctured my tongue. I unclenched my jaw. It's for decor. We exist to drive up the value of the condominiums in the building. We exist to make something look popular, normal, and safe. We're background bioroid actors in a living advertisement. I finally loosened my grip and set the knife by the front entrance. I grabbed my jacket. I don't know what you are, but I'm not decor. I'm normal, I said. My face doesn't come off. Tim lifted his head from his hands and looked at me cynically. Beth, have you ever filmed yourself leaving the house? I leave the house all the time. I know it feels that way, but have you ever actually filmed yourself? We both went on a walk this morning. Tim nodded, and that is the only time. The only time we actually leave is when we walk through the neighborhood. And do you know why? I gave a small shake of the head. I put on my scarf to endorse the ambience of this gentrified hellhole. We're animated mannequins looping on false memories and false lives. We're part of a glorified screensaver. That's not true. I opened the door and got ready to leave. I walk for my knee. I take walks close by because my physiotherapist said it was good for my knee. I don't walk because I'm decor. You can justify it however you want, Beth. Tim crossed over from his chair, but chances are that every physio appointment, every evening out with friends, every memory of the mall is just an implant in your head. You're wrong, and my face does not come off. Tim stood with arms at his sides. He smiled a little. It's like he was glad that I was so stubborn. Are you sure about that? Yes. I prodded behind my cheeks, looking for any ridges. You can reach behind your jaw all you want, Tim said, but that doesn't mean anything. You could be a totally different model than me. Different model? Let me check behind your head. What? Some fakes have better seams, but there's always a particular indent at the back of the head. He came over in slow, steady advances. Stop. I grabbed the knife again. You're not coming any closer. He paused, held up his hands. I could show you with a mirror, or take a picture with my phone to be sure. I don't trust you, Tim, or whatever you are. His face saddened. I swear, Beth, as weird as it sounds, I'm telling the truth. I wish it were different. You have to believe me. I didn't believe him. Or maybe I didn't want to believe him. Or maybe after seeing a person detach their own face, I just couldn't have faith in anything they ever said ever again. I'm going to leave, Tim. I'm staying somewhere else tonight. He shook his head. A hotel won't do anything. They want you to stay at a hotel. You'll make their hotel look good. I'm not telling you where I'm staying. He laughed in an exasperated, incredulous laugh. Seriously, Beth, have you ever really looked at yourself in the mirror? We are the perfect, most banal-looking couple ever to grace this yuppified enclave. We're goddamn robots owned by a strata corporation to maintain the vibe. Think about it. What do you do at home all day? I didn't want to think about it. I walked out the door holding the knife, watching Tim the whole time, daring him to follow me. He didn't. I left down the emergency staircase. It was an ugly breakup. Ugly. I didn't want to see him when I gathered my things, so I only collected my stuff during his work hours. He kept texting me more pictures of the seams along his face. He kept explaining how all of our friends were perpetually on vacation, which is why our whole social life exists only via screens, because it's all an elaborate orchestration to make us think we're real people when we're really just robots designed to walk around and look nice. I called him crazy. I convinced myself that the plug-face encounter in the bathroom was a hallucination. His conspiratorial texts and calls had gotten to me and made me misremember things. That's all it was. The whole plug-face episode was a fabrication. He was just going crazy and trying to drag me down with him, but I was not going along for the ride. After many heated exchanges, I eventually told him as politely as I could to fuck off. I blocked him across all of my messaging apps. 5 months later, he got a new phone number. He sent one last flurry of texts. Apparently, the Strata Corporation was going to decommission his existence. They were finally going to sell our old flat to an actual human couple. My simulation has served its purpose. Soon I'm going to be stored away in that P4 locker indefinitely. I messaged back saying, "Dude, knock this shit off and move on with your life. You're not a robot. Let go of this delusion. Seek help." I texted him a list of mental health resources available online and blocked him yet again. Just because he was having trouble controlling his mania didn't mean he had the right to spill it onto me. These days I'm feeling much happier. I found a new man and reset myself in a completely different part of the city. We live in one of those brand new towers downtown. Our flat is super spacious with quick routes to all nearby amenities. It's something I could have never been able to afford with Tim. Tyler is a plumber with his own business who has his priorities straight. He's letting me take all the time I need to adjust to the neighborhood. I'm spending most of my days sending resumes at home and chatting with Kira and Stacy, who are currently in Barcelona. When they get back, we're going to arrange an epic girls' night. Life's so much better here, so much more peaceful. Tyler holds my hand as we take our nightly walks around our place. My favorite part is when we cross beneath the long waterfall by the front entrance. Beneath the waterfall, the world appears like this shining, shimmering silhouette, waiting to reveal its magic. It's so beautiful. Story number 2. I've walked the same trail every Sunday for the past 2 years of my life. It's not some epic or unnaturally beautiful place. Neither is it a very popular tourist destination. Just a quiet, forested path, tucked behind an old maintenance road near the edge of town. The kind of place that's not marked on a map, but everyone seems to know about it. I guess most people might call it boring and repetitive after a while. No one visits it more than twice due to the predictability of the place. To me, that's kind of the point, Sometimes I'll pass a jogger or someone walking their dog, but more often than not, it's just me and the trees. There's a rhythm to it. A wooden sign at the trailhead, the curve of the hill at the 2-mile mark, and the clearing with the flat boulder that catches late morning sun. I could probably walk it with my eyes closed by now. That's why it was so strange when everything abruptly changed. I started around 10 a.m., like always. Weather was overcast but calm, the kind of gray sky that never quite becomes rain. The air smelled like moss and old bark, soft and a little sweet. Everything looked perfectly normal at first, but by the time I hit the first fork in the trail, I noticed the slight differences, like the trees were a little too dense. The undergrowth off the path looked higher than usual. Subtle things that are easy to dismiss. And so, I did. Whatever, I thought to myself. Wish I would have listened to my gut from the start. Then I passed the creek and didn't hear it. It was there. I could see the water moving, but the sound was off. It was muted, like it was farther away than it looked. I stopped for a second, trying to figure out if I'm going deaf, and listened to the wind. Then I realized there wasn't any wind. Everything was still. Not peaceful, forest morning still, but deafening silence, uncomfortable still. The feeling passed after a few minutes and I kept on walking. I knew this trail better than my own neighborhood, and I'll be damned if I give up before reaching the boulder. That's why I noticed it immediately when the clearing was gone. There used to be a spot just before the 3-mile marker where the trail opened up. Wide, grassy, shaped like a hollow bowl. I always stopped there for water, sat on the flat gray boulder, and listened to the birds, watched the trees sway with the wind. This time, the trail just kept going. The trees were too close together, like someone had dragged the forest inward while I wasn't looking. I didn't see the boulder. There was no sunlight, no birds, and no wind. Just dense, unbroken wood. I stopped, this time finally realizing something was wrong. Checked my GPS, which showed I was exactly where I should be. But the trail ahead wasn't familiar anymore, and the trail behind looked darker than before. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at where the clearing was supposed to be. I mumbled something under my breath about how this can't be possible. Eventually, I took a few steps forward and tried to come up with rational explanations for all this. I told myself I was remembering wrong, although that seemed impossible due to how frequently I come here. Maybe the maintenance crew rerouted something, though I didn't recall any signs of recent work. The undergrowth still lingered in my mind. Could it be erosion? It made no sense, especially when I saw the new trail markers. I saw the first one nailed into a pine. About 5 minutes later, a wooden plaque cracked down the middle with peeling orange paint and coordinates carved by hand. Not stamped, carved. They were shaky lines, as if someone had been in a hurry. I'd never seen it before. I would have remembered. I checked the GPS again, just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. Same location, still on my regular path, and yet nothing on the screen matched what I was seeing. The stillness and unnatural silence persisted. It began making me anxious. Where am I? I slowly turned around, looking back the way I'd come, expecting comfort from the familiarity. But the trail behind me changed. The undergrowth was too thick, the trunks even closer together. It looked older, like no one had walked it in years. But that couldn't be. I had just come through there. I stood still for a moment, my heart beating a little faster than I wanted to admit. I turned toward the path ahead, and while it didn't look much better, it still looked like a trail. Sort of. I made a decision. If something was wrong with the woods, or if someone had messed with the markers or rerouted the trail for some reason, I needed to find where the two paths split. Maybe someone set up new signage and I'd gotten turned around somewhere. I'd keep walking for another 15 minutes at most. If I didn't find a familiar bend, structure, or marker, I'd turn around and retrace my steps. That felt reasonable, though maybe I just wanted to prove I wasn't going insane. 5 minutes passed, then 10, and 15. Nothing I remembered. No bends, fences, signs, just the same overgrowth, same uneven slope, and distant voices. They were faint, just up ahead, too soft to make out, but loud enough for me to know there was someone here. "Hello?" I called out, which broke the silence around me. The voices stopped. Not faded, but abruptly ceased. I stood still for a while, listening and waiting for footsteps, rustling, anything. But there was nothing. I turned in a slow circle, thinking about what to do next. My mind blanked, but I noticed another path, one leading to a clearing ahead that looked unnatural. It was way too circular and clean for it to be in this forest. The trees arched inward around it like ribs. It felt more intentional than natural. It had to be man-made. I should have walked away, but part of me wanted answers. I told myself from there I could get a better look, maybe spot a trail I missed. I stepped into the clearing. It took more than a moment for me to realize the light had shifted. The sun was still out, but the shadows had changed. They were all pointing toward me, every single one. I took a step back. Behind me, I heard a creak. It came from underneath, like branches were moving inside the ground, making room for me. I turned around, and the trail back was gone. The way I'd come from was now a solid wall of trees, thick, old, and impassable. As I moved, the shadows moved with me, not giving me room to breathe. Behind the shadows, I saw something. Not a person or a creature, but trees. Trees that were turning toward me. Their trunks didn't move, but their faces did. Faces that were shaped in the bark in slow, pulsing knots. Patterns formed around them, perfect spirals, slits, and knots. Dozens of them. Eyes. None blinked, but all were facing me now. Watching, I ran. I didn't plan it or pick a direction, just moved forward. Although the trees were dense, I slipped between them, tearing branches off. The shadows followed, their gazes not leaving me. I needed distance. But how do you run away of something you're inside of? The forest resisted. The trees shifted behind me. The undergrowth rose higher. Roots tripped at my heels, but I kept running. Branches whipped my arms. Something snapped past my ear. Could have been a branch or a whisper. I'm not sure. I didn't look back because I didn't want to know what was behind me. The light changed. It was brighter for a moment. Then it suddenly disappeared as if someone covered the sun up. I pushed through a narrow gap in the trees, heart thudding and my lungs burning. Another clearing. No, not another. It was the same clearing, identical to the one I just ran from. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The shadows around me, still following, leaned closer in anticipation. Then from somewhere behind me, I heard something. A quiet chirping, bird song, soft, fragile, and unironically, music to my ears. After all that silence, it truly felt like oxygen. I needed it. I turned toward it and ran. Again, the eyes of the forest followed, trying to capture me. The ground moved beneath my feet, making an effort to slow me. Still, I pushed through brush and shadow, following that single sound like it was the only thing left in the world. And in that moment, it really was. Then suddenly the trees thinned out. No grand exit or light at the end of the forest. They just stopped being dense, and I stumbled out onto the trailhead. Gravel scraped my hand as I caught myself, but I knew where I was, the wooden sign I pass every week. The tree with forte, loud, followed immediately by piano, carved into it. It was finally all so familiar to me. I stood up and turned around. The trail I'd come through was still there. It was silent, unmoving, the quietest part of the entire forest. I don't know how I escaped. Maybe it let me go. Maybe I wasn't worth keeping. Maybe I got lucky. Either way, I haven't been back since. And sometimes I wonder if I ever really left, because that part of the forest, the one that shouldn't exist, I still see it sometimes, just beyond the real trails, waiting for me to go back. Story number 3. I am going to die when it hits midnight. Something from the pits of hell is going to come and devour me. I'm not writing this as a final message or as some kind of summary of my life. I'm writing this as a warning. Whatever you do, do not perform any kind of ritual you see online. Just over a month ago, my friends and I went camping. It was nighttime, and all 5 of us were sitting around the campfire. We had gotten bored, and it was still early in the night. Sam mentioned something about doing this ritual he found online. He was obsessed with urban legends and the things that went bump in the night. Originally, I was hesitant. Growing up, my family was Catholic, and they warned me about messing with the occult and demons, that while these pagan rituals might not actually do anything, the act of inviting something from the other side was dangerous. Isaiah insisted that it was just a story Sam had found online, while Nate joked about my being a wimp. So, I caved. We each performed the ritual, one after another. Sam went first to show us how it was done. Next was Nate, then Isaiah, then James, and finally me. I will not tell you the name of this ritual, nor any of the steps that we performed. I will not have the blood of anyone on my hands. Even after my death, the ritual was supposed to summon a spirit from the dead that would have knowledge from the afterlife. Isaiah was the most skeptical, mentioning something about bias and how the brain interprets information to justify preconceived notions. James said that most supernatural stories are invented to cover up government plots. Sam insisted that the ritual would work, and Nate bet him $10 it wouldn't. Once we all performed the ritual, we waited. The wind howled through the trees, and the fire crackled as we all looked around expectantly. Suddenly, a surge of icy cold wind snapped by us, extinguishing our fire. A few of us jumped at the unexpected gust. We tried to reignite the fire, but nothing worked. Calling it a night, we all went to our tents and went to bed. I slept horribly, plagued by unsettling dreams. I was standing at the edge of a tree line, looking at an open field. The moonlight illuminated tents that had been erected. The dream shifted to one of the tents. A long claw attached to a wrinkled tan finger slowly pulled on the zipper to the tent, revealing the sleeping form of Sam inside. The shriveled, gnarled hand slowly reached into the tent, taking 2 of its clawed fingers and delicately sliding them into Sam's closed eyes. Sam began to shake, his arms flailing wildly. The hand pulled Sam out of the tent and raised him up into the air. His mouth opened, releasing horrible screams. He grabbed the fingers that were currently impaled into his eyes, trying to pull them out. Another weathered hand slowly reached toward the convulsing form of Sam, and with one clean swipe, slit his throat. Sam's hand clasped his throat, trying to stop the loss of blood. Streams of crimson poured out from between his hands and fingers, and Sam's hands slowly dropped to his sides. This thing repeated this for the others. Nate, Isaiah, James. Its finger, now stained in blood and vitreous, pulled open my tent. As it reached its hand inside, I snapped awake. It was morning. I was covered in sweat and had managed to remove myself from my sleeping bag. Peering outside, I saw everyone else sitting around the campfire, talking, laughing, and making breakfast. We later packed up and were taking the drive back home, and I asked if anyone had dreamed anything last night. Everyone shook their heads. They asked me if I had dreamed anything. I told them what had happened, leaving out the violent manner of their deaths. Everyone thought it was weird, but assured me that it was nothing, that the ritual we had performed had gotten me on edge, and my worry had bled into my sleep. Nate poked fun at me, asking if they needed to call my mom to come pick me up. Everyone shared a laugh, and Nate told me not to worry. I reluctantly agreed, but I still felt wrong. A week later, I got the news. Sam was dead. One of his roommates had found him in his room and called the police. While the report of the death didn't include any details other than that he bled out, I was able to meet with his roommate and talk with him. He was obviously distraught by this. The manner of Sam's death was unsettling, to say the least. Sam's eyes had been gouged out, and his neck slit. I quickly brought this up to everyone who had done the ritual. Everyone thought it was unusual and very upsetting, but weren't convinced, even after I mentioned how Sam had died in my dream. Isaiah was convinced that I was misremembering my dream to match Sam's death, to justify my paranoia, saying that dreams were simply the mind's way of processing excess stimuli. But I knew there was something more. What we had done, what Sam had believed that night, had invited something evil into this world, and it wasn't going to stop until it had come for each one of us. Researching was difficult. The ritual had few additional details, and I couldn't find anyone else who had performed it. There were no reported deaths that matched Sam's, and no online legends or myths had anything remotely related. Another week quickly passed, and I woke up to a text from Nate in the old camping group chat. Something's here. No other texts after that. Once again, same as last week, I got the news. Nate was dead. He had always been the charismatic glue of the group, and with him gone, there was nothing to keep the remaining two in check. Their panic was coming in at full force now, and they fully believed me. And if this macabre countdown continued, Isaiah was next. We strategized on what to do. The hubris of youth made us think we could prevent this inevitable march toward death. We went to sages, shamans, priests, witch doctors, and medicine men, collecting any item that was said to ward off evil spirits. On the night of Isaiah's demise, we stood in his room, waiting. We had placed salt at every door and window, and placed talismans in every corner. We drew seals of protection around Isaiah, and held crucifixes, ready to brandish them at this entity. We all waited anxiously, as an old grandfather clock ticked in the corner. It began to chime, announcing the arrival of midnight and the arrival of death. James and I stood in the room when Isaiah's eyes started to dart back and forth, until they settled on the doorway of his room. "Something's at the door," he screeched. Neither I nor James saw anything, but Isaiah continued to look panicked. I urged him to stay in the circle. The handle to the door slowly turned, the sounds of age and rust ringing. The door slowly swung open, but nothing was there. "What is that thing?" Isaiah stammered, his knees shaking, the color draining from his face. "How is this possible?" James and I exchanged a look. Neither of us saw anything. "Don't come any closer," Isaiah yelled out, holding his crucifix in front of him. While his voice may have carried some semblance of courage, the quivering of his hand betrayed him. I could make out the sounds of footsteps quietly approaching Isaiah. As the steps came closer, Isaiah's tremors became more and more violent. Isaiah backed away, stepping out of the circle and toward the edge of the room. "What do you want?" he whimpered, as the sounds of dripping water could be heard, a dark spot appearing on his pants. James and I tried to intervene, brandishing our own crucifixes and burning incenses. Stumbling and tripping, Isaiah scrambled away from this intruder until his back was against the wall. His eyes, which had begun welling up with tears, frantically glanced toward James, then me, pleading. "Please," he whispered, "I don't want to die." We did everything we could. I grabbed a chair and threw it in the space in front of Isaiah, while James threw holy water. The fear that remained on Isaiah's face told us nothing had worked. Suddenly, he screamed. Deep red pits formed in his eyes, and his head was pinned to the wall. He flailed desperately, throwing his arms and legs around wildly. At that exact same moment, I felt a searing pain in my eyes, like hot nails being driven into them. I howled in pain as I reached my hands to my face and felt warm liquid leaking from my eyes. I looked over at James and saw a river of blood was stemming from his eyes. Dropping to the floor, I clawed at my eyes, the pain worse than anything I had ever felt. I glanced over to Isaiah, vainly attempting to prepare myself for what would happen next. A massive gash formed in his neck, and his severed arteries spewed fountains of blood, turning his screams into gargles. The gouges in his eyes leaked blood, giving him tears of deep crimson. He hysterically clawed at the invisible hand that had pierced his skull. My neck erupted in a burning white pain that threatened to leave me unconscious, though I wished it did. I curled up into a ball on the floor, tears mixing with the trails of blood that ran down my face as I sobbed in pain. With a final shake and gasp, Isaiah stopped moving. Isaiah was dead. I slowly pulled myself up and looked at James. There was nothing we could do to prevent this grim fate that awaited us. James was in a panic. His inevitable death was only 7 days away. I only saw him once that week before he died. He was pale, with deep purple splotches beneath his eyes. He hadn't slept for days, and I understood the feeling. The nights following Isaiah's were difficult, with sleep eluding me. I vainly stayed up into the late hours of the night, hoping to be enveloped by a dreamless sleep. If only I could be so fortunate. My dreams turned into hellish nightmares of gory demise, all from the perspective of whatever this ancient evil was. I found out that he tried to run from whatever this thing was. The plane was mid-air when it hit midnight. I didn't even need the morning news to know what happened. James was dead. There was something almost peaceful these past 7 days. Knowing when and how you're going to die is somewhat assuring. I was destined to meet a grisly end, my eyes gouged out and my throat slit. The thought of leaving this world on my own terms crossed my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I would meet the same end as everyone who had gone on that trip, who had done the ritual. Reflecting on the past few weeks, a thought occurred to me. All this time I blamed Sam for performing this ritual and dooming us. I never once thought about my own actions. I was the one who told everyone about my dream. I was the one who was afraid to perform the ritual. My own thoughts and beliefs had given power to this evil. I never should have told them my dream. Maybe they would still be alive. I can see them all, standing in the room while I write this. Their eyeless faces stare at me, watching me tell the story that doomed them. I write this now, not as a cry for pity or a cry for help, but a warning. Do not mess with forces beyond your understanding. Do not tempt fate. Do not invite something from the great beyond, because something might accept that invitation. The clock on the wall has just hit midnight. There is something at my door. In a few short moments, I will be dead. Story number 4. I see him only at night. At first it was just glimpses, flickering lights, soft thuds, little things going missing, things that you didn't really notice right away, not until you needed them, and they were just gone. Or when you realized that neither of your neighbors owned any pets that could make those running, thudding sounds. He makes me feel small and uneasy. Sometimes he just stares at me from the edge of the bed. Other times, I wake to the feeling of something grabbing at my feet. Yet last night, he left me a gift for the first time in months. A box huge, wrapped in silky yellow fabric and tied with a teal ribbon around it, before meeting at the top with a pink bow that stood tall and proud. I didn't want to open it. I really didn't. Yet I felt so compelled. Before making a choice, my hands were already pulling at the teal ribbon and pink bow to get it off, lifting the lid to peer inside, only to find another box. This time it was smaller and a deeper blue, a soft pink ribbon wrapped around it snugly. Again, I go for it, pulling at the ribbon so I can open the box and free what was inside. This time, instead of another box, small pieces of wrapped candies layered the bottom of the box with a crumpled note atop them. You always remember me when you're sad. That's okay. I remember you all the time. As I reached in, my fingers brushed against the candies. They were sticky, like someone had sucked on them before wrapping them up again. The paper crumpled under my touch, damp and warm, clinging to my skin as I picked it up. The note itself was written in big looping letters, almost childlike. Some of the letters smudged, the ink running in places, like it had been held too long in sweaty hands. It was like whoever wrote it was too excited to be careful. The note slipped from my fingers, landing among the candies with a soft, papery sigh. It felt like an eternity. I just sat there, staring into the box, feeling the weight of his words settle over me like a blanket I couldn't pull off. The house felt colder somehow, heavier. In the silence, I heard it, a soft crinkling of candy wrappers from somewhere deeper into the house. I wasn't alone, was I? I don't know if I ever truly was. Act 2. The Descent. It had been months since I'd seen anyone, really. So when Becca texted, "Are you alive? Let's do coffee this week," it felt like a hand reaching down into a dark well. I said yes. I don't know why I did. We met at a little diner we used to haunt in college, back when life wasn't as stressful or paranoid. Becca looked the same. Bright eyes, nervous energy, a purse full of receipts, and half-melted lip balm. I must have looked a little bit different. Her smile faltered the second she got a glimpse of me. "You look," she started, then seemed to think about her words. "Tired." I shrugged at her comment and mumbled something about my job. Small talk filled the first few minutes. Work, weather, some story about her dog chewing through a bag of flour. I nodded and smiled at the right places. but it was like chewing cotton balls that were stuck in my throat. Finally, Becca leaned forward, her voice lowered. "I was worried about you, you know. You went totally dark, no texts, no calls. We thought..." She trailed off with a saddened look in her eyes. "We thought you were dead." She didn't have to say it. I could sense what she wanted to say from a mile away. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I'd wrapped my hands around it anyway, grounding myself in a small, simple discomfort. "I think something's wrong with my house," I told her. The words slipped out before I could catch them. My throat felt dry and I wanted to cry. Becca only blinked. "Wrong how?" I spilled. I told her about the missing things, the noises at night. Even the gift box was left for me. I didn't tell her everything, not about the sticky candies or the note, but enough so she understood. Enough to even get her eyebrows to knit together in concern. At first I thought she believed me. Relief flooded me so fast I almost cried right there on the spot. But then she said carefully, "Mind you," like she was handling a wild animal. "You know, after trauma, it's really common to have, like, weird perceptions. Disassociation, manifesting things that aren't there." I stared at her. "You've been alone a lot." She pressed on gently. "It messes with your brain, makes you see patterns that don't exist, hear things. It's totally normal. You just need support. Therapy, maybe meds." She smiled, like she had just solved the world's hardest problem. Like this was a puzzle, and not my life unraveling at the seams. The walls of the diner felt like they were pressing closer. My hands were shaking, so I jammed them together on top of the table. Becca only reached out and patted my hand. "It'll get better. You just have to want it to." The diner door clanged shut behind me, but the noise barely registered. The cold air hit my face. I didn't even bother zipping up my jacket. Becca meant well, I knew that. She always did. But her words' trauma response, therapy, meds, buzzed around my head like angry wasps. I wanted to believe she was right. I wanted to believe it was just my brain misfiring. Grief, loneliness, confusion. Something I could fix, but deep down, I knew better. Something was there inside that house. My house. You can't fix something that's already inside the walls or floorboards. I barely made it home before I felt it. A shift. That subtle wrongness in the air. Like walking into a room when someone had been laughing 1 second, and now they're just staring at you with a blank expression. That dropping feeling of loneliness. There was something waiting for me on my doorstep as I pulled up. Something wrapped in cheap glittery tissue paper and damp from the morning mist. I picked it up and pushed aside the tissue paper. Inside was a framed photo, an old one at that. Becca and I, arms slung around each other, and we were smiling. It would have made me smile if it wasn't for the fact that her face was scribbled over with Sharpie, as if she were just another void. Below the picture fell another sloppily written note, the paper damp between my fingers. "I'm the reason you made it this far. Don't forget that." The frame I held in my hands dropped and fell against the concrete, splintering and shattering the frame with a sharp pop. From somewhere in the house through the open door, I heard it. A soft rustle. The sticky pat-pat-pat of something small and heavy shifting in the unlit house. Closer. Waiting. I picked up the broken frame and shoved it back into the box, leaving behind small shards of splintered wood and glass. I hurried into the house and shut the door behind me, slamming it closed and locking it immediately. The house didn't feel safer. It felt smaller and smelled sweeter, like pure raw sugar was being boiled with a semi-sweet smell, but soon close to burning. The after smell hit. as if something was rotting behind the wall of sugar. I sank to the couch, curling into myself and holding my breath until my lungs burned. Hush, hush. Don't fret over someone like Becca. And for the first time, I didn't argue. I just accepted it. Act 3. Surrender. The house feels different now. Brighter somehow. Warmer. The walls that were once dull and cracked seem to shimmer faintly, like they've been scrubbed and freshly washed and shone with a candy floss light. I know it's not real. I think I do, at least. But sometimes the colors pulse when I blink too fast. Sometimes the floor feels too soft under my feet, as if I'm stepping on layers of chewed-up gum. But it's better than the emptiness. Better than the cold, quiet ache that used to sit heavy in my chest when I woke up feeling ready to jump in traffic or put glass in my morning breakfast. Now, I wake up to the smell of sugar, sometimes burnt. Other times there's little gifts waiting for me. A handful of chalky candy hearts were left on my pillow, or ribbons were tied to my door handles throughout the house. Sometimes I hear humming around the house, the same broken tune repeating over and over and over. At this point, it should scare me, at least, as it used to. Now, it's almost soothing. I don't leave the house much anymore. The outside world feels too loud and bright. Every conversation is a jagged reminder that I'm not really part of it. Friends or family have reached out. It's an obvious sign that I'm not wanted. At least here, the walls are soft. The lights are gentle. The little creature lingering amongst the house still has yet to reveal himself fully. But I don't mind. I know I'm not alone, nor does he pressure me into anything. He just waits, patiently and smiling. Tonight there's something new waiting in the living room. I see it after emerging from my room with the same clothes I've been wearing for a few weeks now. It's another box. It's bigger than the others, waist high, wrapped in faded red fabric and tied with a thick fraying rope instead of ribbon. No card, no message. Seeing this, I feel a twinge of worry, as if I've driven away the only thing that was actively wanting to be my friend. All that was there was a soft, almost hungry creaking sound coming from inside it. I don't know why my hands are shaking, or why part of me wants to run. Instead, I kneel down in front of the box, the ribbon sliding off in a slow, silken sigh. The lid peels back, with a soft pop of suction. Inside is something gentle and loving, like a warm hug from a mother. A stuffed animal, a pink bear with stripy legs and arms of yellow, purple, and blue. A cream-colored face like those Rushton dolls from the 20s. An eye patch on its left eye, and a button eye on the right. It had little cute boots that were brown with golden buckles. It looked warm and inviting, as if I could sleep forever. Finally, I sigh and look him over. He's sewn from soft faded fabrics and stitched together with thread that's fraying at the seams. The sewn smile on his muzzle looks too tight, pulling the fabric of his face into something that looks like it's in pain. When I touch him, he's warm. Not like a toy warmed by the sun, but a human body, warm, soft, and slow. It felt as if it was breathing between my fingertips. I hug it close and sigh. I lift him above my head. The stitched paws dangle limply, head tilting to one side, as if he's too tired to hold himself up. Up close, I can see the seams better. Uneven, desperate stitches crisscrossing the fabric, like someone had to keep fixing him over and over. He smells faintly of spun sugar and something else underneath, something metallic or sour. I could drop him, grip him tightly, or see how much I can stretch his arms out before they rip with each popping seam. The calls stopped first, then the knocks. I don't know how long it's been since I last opened the door, but the light outside feels too sharp now. Too much. In here it smells like spun sugar and caramel, something deeper, heavier, and souring slowly in the walls. He says that's normal. You're just getting sweeter. He purrs in my ear when the headaches start, when the walls throb and shift in my vision. Act 4, the world knocking. Becca. When the landlord called me, I knew it was bad. I just didn't know how bad. Eviction notice. He grumbled over the phone. Rent's months overdue. Place smells like shit and death. I'm not going back there. If you want to check on your friend, then be my guest. I didn't even hang up properly. Just stayed on the phone like a dead fish before he clicked the phone and the line went dead. I just drove, the world feeling like a blur as I showed up. The apartment building looks the same from the outside, cracked stucco, sagging flower beds, a million small pieces of neglect. Going through the building and up to the second floor, the smell hit me. It wasn't just a rotting smell. Something sickly sweet lingered underneath, like burnt candy and spoiled milk, thick enough to coat my tongue and make me gag. I covered my nose and mouth with my t-shirt, banging on the door until my hand was sore. Please, I begged, and pressed my forehead against the door. Please just let me in. We gotta talk. No answer, only a soft rustling from inside, like something shifting, something dragging itself across the floor. Furrowing my eyebrows, I jiggled the doorknob. Locked, of course. The frame was old, at least, warped from years of cheap construction and cheaper repairs. I threw my shoulder into it once, twice, and the lock splintered with a cheap crack. The door swung inward into a house of sickness. The carpet squelched under my shoes, sticky dark patches soaked through with sugar and worse things. The walls were draped in faded curtains, sagging with moisture. Every surface was littered with candy wrappers, melted, blackened, fused into the furniture like a wax sculpture. And in the center of the living room, lying sprawled against the floorboards, was her, or what was left. Her skin was gone, peeled away cleanly, almost surgically, leaving behind glistening red muscle shining in the dim light. Her body was open split and torn open down the middle from her breastbone to her navel, inside where her organs should have been. Spilled treats, candies and goodies, caramel ropes that glistened, licorice soaked with her fluids, and sugar pearls spilling out like a piñata. I stumbled backwards, bile rising in my throat. Tucked gently against her hollowed chest was a stuffed bear, candy-striped and stitched to look as if it were smiling. He just sat there, slumped and empty, like a toy no one needed anymore. I tried not to puke as I stared, bugs already eating away at her like a human buffet. Flies are already laying their eggs deep beneath the shredded muscle, white larvae wriggling in the crevices of her limp body. I don't remember running down the stairs or hitting the sidewalk, or even throwing up behind the dumpster in the alley of the apartments. The 911 call was a blur, though the blood smeared on my shoes made it look like I was a guilty suspect. I just remember the air as I left, how sweet it still smelled, and clinging to my clothes, even after I got outside. The police arrived in a few cars, lights flashing and boots hitting the cement as they got out of the vehicles. It was midday, so the sun was still high in the sky, beating down upon the onlookers who were watching from behind the tape, and some even trying to get closer as cops shooed them away. No sirens blared, just the flashing lights that pulsed and made my eyes queasy. Soon, the ambulance arrived on the scene with flashing lights as paramedics rushed out of the truck. It felt like a blur, or even dissociation as a paramedic came up to talk to me, wrapping something around me as I sat there on the curb, my hands shaking as I held the foil blanket closer. I watched from the curb, shivering and rocking slightly, while the sound of their radios blended into a single, buzzing tone. They broke through the apartment, hearing some gag in surprise before using their buzzing radios to call for backup. One of the cops tried to talk with me after the paramedic did, his voice bouncing around in my head, and I tried focusing, but I couldn't register what he was saying exactly. I sat there with the paramedics. Overdose, maybe? Meth lab or bath salts. Jesus, what a mess. They didn't look at her like a victim, but a headline, a cautionary tale. They didn't see the melted wrappers or smell the rot under the sugar. I don't even understand what happened in that apartment. Did they even know about what happened? I looked towards the building doors, wide open like a gaping mouth. Cops moved in and out, and the coroner arrived on the scene. Some took photos. Some just stood there with their hands over their faces, trying not to be sick. An investigator was bouncing around, asking questions, scribbling a few things down as he tried getting as much info as he could before he made his way towards me and handed me his card. If you ever need anything to talk, kid, just call that number. We'll figure this out. And with that, he was gone before I could say another word. With a sigh, I pressed my head against my hands. I caught bits and pieces of their conversation. Jesus Christ, what the hell even is this? Sugared over, like some kind of, I don't even know, ritual thing. Wasn't there a few cases like this back in '66? The older of the two cops grimaced, lighting a cigarette and popping it in his mouth with a deep inhale, while his partner looked confused. Which ones? A couple of cases, ranging from kids to young adults. But they died similarly. No skin, I think. I remember reading them. I pressed my forehead harder against the window, the glass cool against my skin, but not enough. Nothing was enough to pull the smell out of my nostrils, the sticky feeling from my hands lingering. The radio squawked again, voices overlapping, but all I heard was the old cop mutter something under his breath as he crushed the cigarette underneath his boot. Breaking news. Gruesome discovery in rundown apartments. Police have concluded their investigation into a disturbing case at the Maplewood Apartments earlier this week, where the body of 22-year-old Molly Tate was discovered in what authorities initially described as unusual and ritualistic circumstances. The victim was found deceased in her home, surrounded by insects, candy that the police suspect as drugs and other materials. Police reports cite extreme decomposition and mutilation, leading investigators to initially suspect drug-related psychosis or cult involvement. The unnamed witness, a longtime friend of the deceased, was taken into custody at the scene for questioning. Sources say inconsistencies in her statement and past behavioral concerns flagged her for further investigation. However, no formal charges have been filed at this time. Authorities note a strange connection to several unsolved cases from the 1960s, where victims were found under eerily similar circumstances, homes invaded internally, and bodies skinned and mutilated. Police emphasize there is no ongoing threat to the public at this time, and the cause of death remains officially listed as undetermined. In other news, city officials remind residents that the annual Harvest Festival is this weekend. Stay safe and enjoy the festivities. I turned off the TV. The apartment was quiet except for the soft, almost imperceptible sound of something crinkling under my bed. Story number 5. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind that settles over everything like a soft sigh. Outside my apartment window, the sky stretched pale and cloudless, and the hum of the city felt distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. Inside, I moved slowly, cleaning up after another long writing session. My notebook lay open on the coffee table, pages filled with half-finished poems and story fragments, the ink from my blue fountain pen still drying in places. I capped the pen and slid it into the spine of the notebook, then returned it to the shelf. I had spent most of the weekend writing, stories, poems, anything to keep my mind off the work week ahead. The spreadsheets and emails could wait. For now, it was just me, my notebook, and the quiet hum of the apartment. I should have been preparing for Monday, but something tugged at me. A quiet pull toward the corner of the room, where an old photo album sat beneath a stack of books I hadn't touched in years. I hesitated. Then I walked over, pulled it free, and brushed off the thin layer of dust. The cover creaked as I opened it, and suddenly I was back in Red Horse. Page after page, the memories came flooding in. Snapshots of fishing trips with Dad, hikes through golden fields, beach days with sunburned noses and sticky fingers. There were photos of the farm market in full swing, of sunflowers taller than me, of the old barn where I used to hide when I needed to be alone. And then I turned the page, and there she was, Emilia. Her smile hit me like a punch to the chest. She stood beside me and my parents, her arms slung casually over my shoulder, her eyes bright with something I hadn't seen in years. I remembered that day. I remembered the way the sun lit up her hair, the way she laughed at something I said, the way everything felt like it was exactly where it was supposed to be. My throat tightened. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until the album slipped from my lap and hit the floor with a soft thud. The photo fluttered loose and landed face down. I wiped my eyes and reached for it. But something caught my attention. There was a small folded piece of paper taped to the back. My heart skipped. I knew what it was. I had taped it there myself, years ago, when the memory was still too sharp to face head-on. With trembling fingers, I peeled the tape away and unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. Emilia's. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear, still full of the warmth and hope of that day. I read it aloud, my voice barely above a whisper. A regular day in our little farm town, where sunflowers sway and tractors hum, where the sky feels endless and the breeze feels kind, and everything just fits. But what makes it more than just another day is you. So maybe this is silly, but I'll say it anyway. Will you be my boyfriend? Let's make each other smile forever. I sat there for a long time, the poem resting in my lap, the photo beside it. Outside, the sun had started to dip, casting long shadows across the floor. Inside, the past had come rushing back, and with it, the question that had haunted me for years. What really happened to Emilia? I remember the night before it all changed more clearly than I remember most of last week. I was 16, sitting at my desk in the attic bedroom of our old farmhouse in Red Horse. The air was warm and still, the kind of summer night that made the walls feel closer than they were. I had just finished the last problem in my math homework, the numbers still swimming behind my eyes as I leaned back and stretched. For a moment, everything felt simple, normal. Then I looked out the small window above my desk. At first I thought it was a shooting star, a streak of light cutting across the sky. But then it did something no star should ever do. It made a sharp U-turn, not a curve, a turn, like it had changed its mind. Then it stopped, just stopped, hovering. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again, gone. I sat there for a while, staring at the empty sky, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Probably just a plane, or a satellite. Or maybe I'd been reading too many science fiction stories again. I laughed it off, but something about it stuck with me, like a splinter in the back of my mind. Still, that wasn't what made the night unforgettable. What made it unforgettable was the decision I made after. I was going to tell Amelia how I felt. We'd been best friends since we were kids. Inseparable, really. But somewhere along the way, my feelings had shifted. I'd tried to ignore it, tried to pretend it was just a phase. But it wasn't. I loved her, and I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I barely slept that night. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd say it. I imagined every possible reaction. Her laughing, her crying, her walking away. But I had to try. I had to know. The next day was a warm Friday afternoon. The kind of day where the sun feels like it's leaning in close, listening. We met at Pearson's Park, like we always did. It was our place. Wide open fields of tall grass and wildflowers, winding dirt paths, and the old wooden bench under the willow tree. It was quiet, peaceful, safe. I was nervous. My hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. I was just about to speak when Amelia reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I wrote something," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. She unfolded it and began to read. It was a poem. Her poem, a confession. She loved me too. I didn't even let her finish before I pulled her into a hug, laughing and crying at the same time. I said yes. Of course, I said yes. It felt like the world had finally clicked into place. For the first time in my life, everything felt right. And for the last time, everything felt safe. The wind moved through Pearson's Park like a slow breath, stirring the tall grass in gentle waves. Amelia and I walked hand in hand, still glowing from what had just happened. Her fingers were warm in mine, and every few steps we'd glance at each other and smile like we were both afraid it might all vanish if we looked away too long. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows across the field. The light turned everything gold, her hair, the grass, even the dirt path beneath our feet. It felt like the world was holding its breath for us. Then I saw it. Just behind us, maybe 20 feet back, a patch of grass moved, wrongly. It wasn't swaying with the wind like the rest. It was pushing against it, bending in the opposite direction, like something was crawling through it. I stopped walking. Amelia looked at me, puzzled. "What is it?" I stared at the grass. It had stopped moving. Everything looked normal again. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Thought I saw a rabbit or something." We kept walking, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I glanced back again. There it was, closer this time. The same patch, moving deliberately, like it was following us. Then it froze again, perfectly still, as if it knew I was watching. A chill crept up my spine. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to scare her. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe I was still rattled from the night before, from that strange light in the sky. But then Amelia leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "Did you see that too?" I stopped walking. My heart was pounding now. She didn't look at me. She just kept her eyes on the grass behind us, her expression tight, her jaw clenched. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. We ran. The tall grass whipped at our legs as we sprinted toward the edge of the park, our hands still locked together. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see whatever it was. I just ran, lungs burning, heart hammering. The sound of our footsteps swallowed by the wind. But I could feel it. Something was behind us. Something was coming. We tore through the last stretch of tall grass, the edge of Pearson's Park, finally in sight. Relief surged through me until I slammed into something that wasn't there. It was like hitting glass, but there was nothing in front of me. No shimmer, no distortion, just air and an invisible wall that sent me sprawling backward onto the ground. Amelia cried out as she collided with it too, her hands outstretched, pressing against the unseen surface. I scrambled to my feet and pounded on it, shouting her name, shouting for help. But the sound felt wrong, muffled, distant, like it was being swallowed before it could even leave my mouth. We were sealed in. I turned, scanning the park's edge, and spotted Charlie, the mailman, walking his usual route. I waved frantically, slammed my fists against the barrier, screamed his name. He saw us. He walked toward us, confused, his mouth moving, but we heard nothing, not a word, not even a whisper. It was like we were watching a silent film, trapped behind soundproof glass. I backed up, took a running start, and threw myself at the wall. It didn't budge. Pain exploded through my shoulder as I hit the ground again, gasping. Amelia knelt beside me, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. Then we saw them, Lily and Sam, our elderly neighbors, standing at the edge of the park, pointing behind us, their faces twisted in horror. Their mouths moved rapidly, shouting something, maybe warning us, but still, we heard nothing. Charlie turned, looked where they were pointing, and ran. I turned too, and saw it. Tall, robed, silent. It hovered just beyond the grass, its form almost blending with the shadows, slender and impossibly symmetrical, hiding its body beneath a flowing robe that shimmered with iridescent colors, like oil on water, shifting with every breath of wind. The robe concealed most of its body, but now and then a long gray arm would emerge, impossibly smooth and jointless, as if sculpted from stone. Its head was hidden beneath a sleek obsidian helmet, featureless, faceless, a void that seemed to drink in the light around it. There were no eyes, no mouth, no expression, just a black emptiness that watched us. It didn't move, it didn't speak, it just floated there, silent and still. Amelia screamed, but even her voice sounded strange inside the bubble, like it was being pulled inward, away from the world. Then she began to rise, her feet lifted off the ground, her arms limp at her sides, her body stiff as if caught in invisible strings. She floated upward, slowly, silently, her eyes locked on mine. "No!" I shouted, finally breaking free of my paralysis. I ran toward her, reaching out, but that thing raised one hand, and I flew backward. The impact with the barrier knocked the wind out of me. I crumpled to the ground, dazed, barely conscious. Two beams of light descended from the sky, blinding, brilliant, and impossibly quiet. They enveloped Amelia and it in a soft glow. And then they were gone, just like that. Then sound rushed back in like a crashing wave. Birds, wind, voices. I heard shouting, dozens of them, rushing toward me. Townspeople, witnesses, questions flying from every direction. But I couldn't answer. I just lay there, staring at the empty sky, my heart broken open, my world forever changed. The days after Amelia vanished felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. At first, the town of Red Horse was stunned into silence. People whispered, stared, avoided eye contact. But it didn't take long for the fear to set in. Real fear. The kind that makes people lock their doors in the middle of the day and jump at the sound of the wind. Everyone had seen it. The light. The thing in the field. The way she was taken. And yet, when the news vans came, when the reporters showed up with their microphones and skeptical smiles, no one believed us. They called it a hoax, a mass hallucination. Some even accused us of staging it for attention. The footage people had taken on their phones was dismissed as doctored. The eyewitness accounts were twisted into punchlines on late-night talk shows. We became a joke. Amelia's parents didn't stop fighting. They went on every local station that would have them, wrote letters to anyone who might listen. They begged for help, for answers, for someone, anyone, to believe them. No one did. Families started leaving, some out of fear, others out of shame. Red Horse became a ghost town in slow motion. Businesses closed. The school lost half its students. People stopped saying Amelia's name. But I couldn't forget. Everywhere I went, I saw her. In the empty bench at Pearson's Park. In the corner booth at the diner where we used to split milkshakes. In the mirror, in my own eyes, where the guilt never left. I should have done something. I should have pulled her down. I should have fought harder. I should have, but I didn't. And I couldn't change that. When I turned 20, I packed a suitcase full of notebooks and left Red Horse. Not to escape, to search. I told myself that if she was still out there, somewhere, somehow, I had to find her. I didn't care how long it took. I didn't care if it was impossible. I just couldn't let her be gone. Not like that. So I searched for years. I followed every rumor, every strange sighting, every whisper that sounded even remotely like her name. I crossed cities, borders, oceans. I spoke to people who claimed to have seen lights in the sky, who swore they'd been taken and returned. I filled notebook after notebook with dead ends, but I never found her. And slowly, the world moved on. Except for one thing. Every year, on the anniversary of the day she disappeared, I came back. It doesn't feel like 5 years. Some days it feels like 5 minutes. Others, like 5 lifetimes. Every July 3rd, I return to Red Horse. I drive the same road, past the same weathered signs, and park in the same gravel lot beside Pearson's Park. The town has changed. New faces, new buildings, but the field is the same. The grass still sways in the wind like it remembers. People know me now, not by name necessarily, but by ritual. The quiet figure who returns once a year, always at the same hour, always walking alone into the tall grass. Only my parents and Amelia's parents come with me now. They don't speak. They just stand at the edge of the field, giving me space. I step into the grass, the wind brushing against my arms like a memory. I carry 2 things, the photo of Amelia and a folded sheet of paper, my own poem, written for her, for this moment. I stop at the same spot, the place where she vanished, and I read. I still see you in the tall grass, where the wind once carried your laugh. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't strong enough, but I'm still here. Searching, waiting, hoping the sky brings you back to me. When I finish, I fold the paper and press it to my chest. The others have already turned to leave, giving me time. I stay a little longer, letting the silence settle. In 5 years, I've searched everywhere. I've followed rumors, chased dead ends, spoken to people who claimed to know something, anything. But there was never a trace, no sightings, no signals, no answers. Until now. Just as I turn to go, I see it. A small piece of paper, half buried near the path. It flutters slightly in the breeze, like it's been waiting for me. I kneel, heart pounding, and pick it up. The handwriting stops me cold. It's hers. I unfold it slowly, afraid it might vanish if I move too fast. The words are soft, lyrical, like all her poems, but there's something else in them now. Sorrow, loneliness, a voice reaching out from somewhere far away. I wake in dark that never ends, hands like ice, minds that bend. They tear my thoughts, they twist my skin, and call it learning from within. But through the pain, I see your face, a memory time cannot erase. I whispered your name into the void, the only light they've not destroyed. I read it again, and again. It's her. Somehow, impossibly, it's her. I don't know how it got here. I don't know what it means. But I know one thing with absolute certainty. She's still out there. And after all these years of wandering, of chasing shadows and silence, I finally have something real. So I'm coming back, not just to remember her, but to find her. Story number 6. Have you seen a movie called A Good Film? If you have, I'm guessing you don't remember it. Nobody in my town does either. That's kind of the point. I live in a small rural town in Arizona, one of those places where the buildings look sun-bleached and tired, where the same people walk into the same diner and sit in the same booth every day. No rush, no change. Nothing ever really happens out here. People here are the type to stay. They graduate, marry their high school sweetheart, get a job they hate, and die on the same lot of land they were born, and they're fine with that. No one's in a hurry to be anything other than what they already are, except me. My name's Percy. I'm 17, and I hate it here. I wish I could be content like everyone around me. I think I would feel a lot more fulfilled if I did. But I want out. Out of the dust, the routine, the same people day after day. I want to do something, be someone. I want to live in a place where there is opportunity. I don't think that's too much to ask, which is why this event, this movie, was such a surprise. I can excuse a lot of things. A lot of superstitious stuff goes down in towns like this. Haunted hotels, local legends, that kind of thing. But this is different. It's terrifying. But nobody else seems to care. They just laugh it off. Call it a magic trick, a gag, something they'll forget and never think about again. An event like this comes and goes, and everyone just goes back to the same old routine. But not me. Not after what I've seen. And if you're reading this, I need to know. Have you seen it? Do you remember anything at all? If you have no idea what I am talking about, I wouldn't be surprised. Most people are in the same boat as you. But don't worry, I'll explain everything shortly. It all started with a commercial. My dad was slouched in his recliner, watching the evening news while I made a sandwich in the kitchen. Local channel, Channel 404, I think it was. The news anchor was in the middle of some gripping story about an egg shortage. Then came a commercial break. The screen stayed black a little too long enough for my dad to grumble. Did the cable go out again? But then, a message, white text faded in, written in some curly classical font. Coming to Mountain Rim Theater. There was no music, no narrator. The whole thing felt old, like a film reel pulled out of some vintage camera. The footage had scan lines, dust pops, that scratchy noise projectors make when they start up. More text appeared. Come see a good film. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll never remember what you saw. That was it. No trailer, no plot, no rating. Just that one strange promise. You'll never remember what you saw. Then it cut back to the news, like nothing had happened. At first I thought it was a joke. A good film, that is the title. They can't be serious. But the next day, it aired again. Same thing. Then again. Twice a day. Then every hour on the hour. Same scratchy black and white message. Same unsettling quiet. Soon enough, the whole town was talking about it. Everyone wanted to see a good film. I figured people had something to say about it online. I pulled out my phone and did a quick search. Nothing. No official website. No showtimes online. No movie database entries. Not even a Reddit post. It was like the film only existed here. People around town thought it was hilarious. My friend Charlie said he went on opening night. Said the place was pretty booked. Everyone there saw the advertisement and wanted to see for themselves. He remembers sitting down and seeing what he called a goofy intro. Looked like one of those silent films we learned about in film studies. Black and white. Flashcards for dialogue. Then boom, he was outside. That's how he described it. One second he's watching an old-timey intro. The next, he's standing in the lobby, laughing with strangers. "Didn't that weird you out?" I asked. Charlie shrugged. "I don't know. It's like a dream or surgery or something. You know, like antiseptic. Anesthetic," I corrected. I loved Charlie. But my God, was he dull. Yeah, whatever. It's not a big deal. Just a magic trick. It's fun. You sit down, you watch, you leave, and you forget. Brighter minds than Charlie called it performance art. A postmodern meta-stunt. Some elevated cinema thing. Nobody was scared. Nobody asked questions. Except me. I asked my teachers. The grocery store clerk. Even Big Dave, the guy who makes moonshine in his garage. They all said the same thing. You should go see it for yourself. It's fun. You're taking it too seriously. So I did. Friday night, 9:30 p.m. showing, Mountain Rim Theater. The walk to the theater was short, but it felt longer that night. The sun had already dipped behind the mountains, and the strip mall lights flickered like they were shorting out. Mountain Rim Theater sat at the end of a half-empty lot. A crumbling building with 3 movie posters in rusted frames. One of them blank. I could hear the hum of the marquee before I saw it. It was missing a few letters as usual. A G.O.D. film in big black letters hovered just above the ticket counter. I walked up to the ticket window. The line was surprisingly long for a late showing. I pay in cash and step inside. The theater was half full when I entered. Mostly locals. They talk in low voices and crunch popcorn, waiting for the usual trailers to roll. But when the lights finally dimmed, it was different. No ads, no music. The screen blinks white. Then an old-timey title card fills the silver screen. Presenting a good film. It looks like a reel from the 1950s. Faded, jittery, charming. Then something drops in from the top of the frame. A man. He lands hard on invisible floor, limbs limp, palms flat. A slapstick entrance. The audience chuckles. I don't. His outfit is pure mime cliché. He dons a tight blazer of thick black and white stripes, narrow lapels and pearl buttons. It's too clean, too perfect, as if it's been ironed onto his skin. White gloves cover his long, thin fingers. His pants match his jacket. The makeup on his face is heavy and cakey. Chalky white, layered thick, cracking at the edges of his mouth. His lips are painted black and pulled into a permanent smile that never quite reaches his eyes. The eyes are the worst part. Circles of matte. Black that swallow any light. No lashes, no gleam, just pits in his face. He dusts himself off with sharp, exaggerated flicks. Then he straightens, clicks his heels together, and bows. From the right edge of the screen, a stack of giant flashcards sails into view. He snatches them out of the air, gloved fingers snapping shut with a loud clap. The cards are bright white and almost poster-sized, with bold black letters centered in each frame. He flips the first card towards the audience, starring Brad Pitt. The mime gasps, ruffles his hair, and flexes a bicep in a cheesy imitation of the renowned actor. Card 2, Leonardo DiCaprio. He clutches an imaginary Oscar and mouths a silent thank you. Card 3, Marlon Brando. He puffs out his gut, tugs at invisible suspenders, and mimes puffing a cigar. The audience laughs behind me. Someone whispers, "Now that's a cast." The cards keep coming. Half the names are real, half nonsense. Jane Doe, Tom Hanks, Grandma Betty. With each reveal, he acts out a caricature. The sketch is goofy and harmless. I'll admit, even I thought it was a clever gimmick. An all-star cast for a movie you won't even remember watching. Then it stops. Mid-gesture, his arms drop. Gloves hang limp at his sides. The smile on his face collapses into a blank line. His head tilts, eyes fixed on us, or maybe behind us. Every inch of him is slack, like a marionette, with the strings clipped mid-performance. The hair on my arms stood straight up. Uneasy murmurs ripple through the theater. After a few more unsettling moments, the screen goes black. No music, no picture, just darkness thick enough to swallow the sun. A low hum rises, deep and steady, like a generator buried under the floorboards. After what feels like a full minute, a single word appears in stark white letters. Enjoy. The hum stops. My stomach tightened. I felt like I was bracing at the top of a roller coaster just before the big drop. The world goes blank. And then, I was outside, standing near the theater doors. People walked past me, laughing, chattering, and disposing of uneaten popcorn buckets. I touched my face. I was smiling. I felt content, but I didn't know why. My hands were shaking. It wasn't exactly fear. This was more like confusion, like something had been taken from me, my body reacting to something it couldn't understand. I tried to remember what I saw. Nothing. Not a single frame, not a sound. The final word ringing in my head. Enjoy. I heard bits of pieces of other audience members' conversations as they passed me. What part was your favorite? Someone asked. I honestly have no idea. Another woman laughed and said, I didn't expect Brad Pitt to do, that thing in the movie. They all laughed and continued on their way. It was just an inside joke to them. A crazy experience. I needed answers. Found a kid working the ticket counter. You ever seen the movie? I asked him. He shrugged. Yeah, I've seen it. Pretty good, I think. I don't know. Everyone seems to like it. But you don't remember anything about it? He laughed. Nope, nobody does. Didn't you see the ads? Doesn't that freak you out? No, not really. You ever seen a hypnotist? I went to a show on a vacation with my parents last summer. Just kind of feels like that. I started to back away from the counter. My head started to feel dizzy. How is everyone so calm? Why am I the only one so freaked out about this? I peeked back into the empty theater I apparently just walked out of. Nothing looked out of place. Just an empty theater. A few workers cleaning up here and there. I don't know what happened to me. And whatever it wasn't over. A few days passed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened in that theater. Something worse than not remembering. Something evil hiding behind that word. Enjoy. It wouldn't leave me alone. It flashed behind my eyelids every time I tried to sleep. Like a neon marquee burned into my eyelids. Sometimes I'd hear the hum again, faint and low, coming from beneath my floorboards. The same hum from the theater. The same one that came right before the blackout. Everyone else moved on. Back to work. Back to school. Back to forgetting. I'd ask my friends about it, just casually. They'd smile and say, "Oh yeah, that was fun," and then go back to doing whatever they were doing, like it was a dream they had already forgotten. Some part of them knew this wasn't something harmless. They knew deep down it was wrong. Maybe it was just easier that way. If you can't do anything about it, you might as well let it go. That's how things go in this town. Something strange happens. You ignore it. You let it fade. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't stop thinking about that word, about the mime's dead stare, about how I woke up smiling when I didn't even remember what I was smiling about. I wanted to be like them. I tried to be. But every time I closed my eyes, I thought I'd open them again to find myself back in that hallway, right outside the theater doors. I started to wonder if this is how it begins for people like me. The ones who don't let go. The ones who poke at things they're not supposed to. Some slow unraveling. A thought you can't shake. A sound that follows you. a word that burns itself into the back of your brain. It was the not knowing that tore at me, the empty space where a memory should have been. I needed to fill it. I needed to understand. So I made a plan. Go back. Sit through the intro again, and this time, I'll keep my eyes closed. The kid from the theater got me thinking. Maybe it is some kind of hypnosis. Maybe there's some code playing on screen that brings on some form of temporary amnesia. I may not be able to look at it, but I can listen. Monday, 9:30 p.m., showing again. I sat in the same seat, 4th row from the back, center aisle. Not too close, not too far. The room filled in around me. Different faces, of course. But I could feel the same relaxed and curious energy. No trailers, no music, just the projector warming up. The screen lit up. Title cards, black and white again. The same fake cast list. Someone snorted behind me as it rolled. Then, the final card, enjoy. I shut my eyes quickly. Silence, not just from the film. Real silence. No movement in the theater. No crunching of popcorn or slurping from plastic cups. At first I thought I could hear breathing. Soft, rhythmic. A whole room of people inhaling at the same time. In and out. It was hypnotic. Like a wave. Everyone breathing in unison. I had my eyes closed, but I could feel their focus. All of them staring at the same mysterious screen. Then the static started. It came on slow, like a TV warming up. A low crackle from somewhere deep in the walls. Then it hit, all at once, deafening. A wall of sound crashed over me from all around, sharp and crackling. I jumped in my seat the moment it hit me. I clenched my fist against the hard plastic armrest. Then it changed. It got quieter, then louder again, sharper, then duller. It was being tuned, like it was narrowing in on something. I was so tempted to open my eyes, but a new sound shook the thought from my mind as quickly as it came. It was hard to hear through the faint static, but I knew for sure it was there. I heard stirring above me. Something was moving. It scraped across the ceiling, slow at first, then faster, like it was crawling along the panels somehow. It didn't sound mechanical. It sounded wet, organic, but heavy. Each step thudded, followed by a hiss or click. The sound started somewhere near the front of the theater. I couldn't know for sure, but it was almost as if the thing crawled right out of the silver screen itself. The thudding sounds grew closer and closer overhead. It was maybe 5 rows in front of me, then 2. Then it stopped. It was right above me now. I held my breath. My whole body locked up. The static began to fade. Silence again, but only for a few seconds. Suddenly a laugh broke out from one of the audience members. One voice, a high-pitched giggle near the front, then another, then all of them. The room exploded. Laughter from every direction. Dozens of voices. Full, hearty belly laughs like a comedy was playing. The laughter didn't stop. It kept rising, cracking. It got frantic, hysterical. People started coughing mid-laugh. I heard someone gasping like they were choking. A retching sound came from the far left. What began as something joyful quickly turned sinister. It seemed nobody could stop laughing, no matter how painful. I wanted to move, but I couldn't. The sound was so wrong it made my stomach curl. I wanted to rip my ears off just to make it stop. Above me the thing shifted again. It was closer now. I could hear it breathing. No, not breathing. Sniffing. Short, wet sniffs. Like it was trying to figure me out. Then the laughing stopped. Every voice in the room went silent. I would have felt some relief had it not been for the invisible threat looming right in front of me. I tried keeping still. I prayed the thing would get bored of me, make its way someplace else. This was a bad idea. I shouldn't have come back here. Maybe I should make a run for it. Suddenly the moaning began. Low, guttural, pained. A woman let out a high animalistic wail. A man shouted something. His voice cracked halfway through. Someone whimpered, begging. I didn't understand why they sounded so agonizing. Then I heard another sound, something wet. I could hear it everywhere, like skin being peeled or shoved back into place. I really couldn't tell. The sound came in waves like the moaning. A yell here, a wet tear there. It was torture. It was torture to listen to. I started to retreat into my seat. Whatever was happening could make its way to me at any moment. The only difference between me and everyone else here is I would feel it. I would remember. I felt sick. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sounds were inside me now. I stayed like that as long as I could. But it was too much. I feared if I stayed any longer, I wouldn't leave this theater. I stood up, and everything stopped. The moaning, the screaming, the sounds, all gone, dead silent. I fought the urge to open my eyes. I needed to get out of here, now. I felt my way forward, hands brushing seat backs, shoulders pressed lazily into them. No one moved, no one breathed. That's when I noticed it, how sticky everything was. Each step made a wet sound, like I was walking through raw meat. My fingers were slick, dripping. I didn't want to think about what it was. My hand slipped off a seat back as I shuffled sideways down the row. I caught myself, steadied my breathing, and kept going. It felt like an eternity. This theater isn't that big. I was seated only a few seats into the row. I should have reached the aisle by now. I started counting. 10 seats, 15, 25. Still no aisle. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. Was I walking in circles? Was something looping me in and out of the same row? Then, finally, I felt the gap. The aisle. I turned and started inching toward the steps. One hand on the cold metal railing, until it wasn't. My palm hit a patch of mystery goo and slid straight off. I lost my balance. I hit the ground hard, arms scrambling to catch myself on the slick steps. My hand met the floor with a wet smack. For a second, I almost opened my eyes. Thank God I caught myself. I wiped whatever it was off my hands, pushed myself upright, and reached blindly for the railing again. That's when I heard it. A giggle. Above me. It wasn't human. It was too clean, too high-pitched, like a sound effect from an old TV show. I froze. The giggling stopped. The familiar sound of thumping on the ceiling returned. I started down the aisle. It followed me, track by track, step by step. I put both hands on the railing and forced myself forward. Almost there. The thumping was closer. So close I could feel it. The ceiling thudded. Heavy, deliberate footsteps crawling along the darkness above me. Then, a breath. Hot and wet across the back of my neck. I stifled a scream in my throat. But I kept moving, eyes still shut, screaming to be opened, begging to reveal the danger around me. I turned the corner toward the exit ramp, dragging my hand along the wall to guide myself. The breath continued, closer now, then a whisper right into my ear. I braced for the end, for something cold to wrap around my neck, to be pulled upwards like a fish on a hook. But nothing happened. The air changed. Warmth hit my face. I was outside the theater. I slowly opened my eyes. The lobby lights were on. I made it. Before I could even take a moment to catch my breath, I remembered the sounds. Wet, slimy, dripping. I looked down at my body. I expected the worst. Blood, flesh, something missing. But my hands, clean. My shoes, dry. Not a single stain. It looked exactly the same as when I walked in. It seemed too good to be true. I turned to glance at the lobby. Everything was still. The showing was still going on, so the hallway outside the auditorium was completely empty. Or at least, I thought it was. I started walking toward the exit doors when I heard it. A voice. "Hey there." I stopped and whipped around. A guy was leaning against one of the empty movie poster frames to my left. I hadn't seen him there before. Clean white shirt, black pants. His hair was slicked back tight, not a strand out of place. He looked like he stepped out of a 50s musical number. He smiled, unblinking. "What did you think?" I stammered a bit under my breath. My thoughts were scrambled, screams and laughter still echoing in my mind. "What?" "The movie," he said. "What did you think about it?" I took a slow step back. Have you seen it?" I asked him shakily. He gave a casual shrug and took a step toward me. "You just look a little rattled is all. Thought maybe something happened in there." His tone was light, conversational, but something in his eyes didn't match it. They were cold, fixed, unblinking. I felt my whole body tense. "Well, even if something happened, you wouldn't remember, would you, Percy?" I needed to leave. Now. I turned, already halfway to the exit. I hear him speak again, not too far behind, low and sharp. "Go back and finish the movie, Percy." I didn't think. I just ran. Through the doors, past the ticket counter, across the parking lot. I didn't stop running until I was back home and locked in my bedroom. That was the last time I ever stepped foot in Mountain Rim Theater. That was also the last time anyone saw a good film. The movie stopped showing the very next day. No explanation, no headlines, just gone. And honestly, I wish I could say that was the end of it. But it's not. I thought I needed answers, thought I needed to understand what was going on. But I realize now, that was a mistake. There's such a thing as being dangerously curious. Some things aren't meant to be understood. If I'd stayed in that theater any longer, I don't think I would have come out at all. So, learn from me. If a good film ever shows up at your theater, don't go. I don't care how curious you are. I don't care how quirky the ad seems. I don't care if everyone you know says it's no big deal. It is. I don't know what I saw. Nobody does. That's the trick, the curse, whatever the hell it is. You go in, you see something, and you walk out smiling. But you don't know why. You never know why. And if you try to fight it, if you close your eyes and really listen, you'll hear the truth. The pained laughter, the moans, the wet sounds of something tearing and putting itself back together. I still don't know what it was, that thing on the ceiling, but I try not to think about it. Some nights, though, I still hear it. That low hum, that static, those thick inhuman breaths just above my head. And sometimes, just as I'm falling asleep, I hear it again. A soft, menacing giggle. And a word. The last thing it whispered in my ear before I ran out of the theater. Enjoy. Story number 7. I did not order the painting. Let's get that out of the way right now. I was mildly buzzed, yes, but not so inebriated that I'd mistakenly click buy now and order the scariest painting I've ever seen in my life. Like most people, I like to look at stuff I'd never buy online. Last month it was houses I can't afford on Zillow. This month, it's paintings. If I really like one, I might save it to make it my desktop theme. That's the extent of my commitment to supporting art. See, I'm too poor to afford to deck my walls in original artwork, even if I wanted to order a painting. Which I didn't, especially not this painting. It depicted a figure in an impressionist style, sort of like the famous Munch the Scream, crossed with the style of Rembrandt. The figure all cloaked in darkness except for the illumination on the face. The face was the most horrifying part, a fleshy patchwork of light in the otherwise dark canvas, featureless, indistinguishable, like a nightmarish figure out of a dream. I remember staring at my phone for several long minutes, zooming in on that figure, wondering what it was about the not quite humanness of it that made it so creepy. Even through the phone screen, even with no eyes, I could swear I felt it watching me. I took a screenshot, sent it to some friends asking if it wasn't the creepiest thing they'd ever seen in their lives. That conversation quickly devolved into us sending lots of scary art pictures back and forth, like classic paintings of spooky children, disproportionate babies, a little Bosch, and so on. Fast forward 3 days. There's a package on my doorstep waiting for me when I get home, wrapped in brown paper. I tear open the paper packaging, and it's the painting. That painting. The featureless smear of a face stares at me from the dark canvas. It looks so fleshy I could almost sink my fingers into it. Now, I assumed, of course, that someone ordered the painting for me as a joke, but none of my friends would admit to it. The conversation turned to teasing about me being cursed. To me, this was just further evidence that one or all of them were playing what they thought was the world's most hilarious prank. And honestly, I thought it was kind of funny too, so I went along. I hung the cursed painting in my living room, and that was that. It should have gone down in the book of my life as a mildly amusing footnote, something to tell guests about whenever they came into my home and asked what the hell was that creepy painting on the wall. But a week after it arrived, I was sitting at my desk working when I swear I heard a quiet rustle. And you know how you can feel it when someone in your periphery is staring? The sensation was so strong, I turned around, and I almost screamed. The painting had eyes, and they were watching me. And I swear to God, swear to you on everything holy, it blinked. Maybe the blink was just my imagining, but it definitely had newly painted eyes there in its fleshy, impressionistic blotch of a face. Smears of darkness with just a tiny hint of light reflecting from them. Of course, I snapped a photo and sent it to my friends. And of course, they all assumed I'd painted on the eyes myself. Even I had to admit, when I got up close, it was clear that new paint had been applied on top of the original. I sent another text to the group. All right, which of you jokers has been in my house? Denials all around. Maybe it was a prank, I thought. Most of my close friends know where I keep my spare key. But the painting kept changing. The changes were so subtle, I honestly didn't notice at first. Even when I did, I assumed it was whoever had pranked me by buying the painting, that they were adding brush strokes whenever we had get-togethers. It almost became normal, the way I'd see new additions, just a little at a time. We often joked about it, everyone wondering who the mystery artist was who kept adding details. My friends would later tell me they all honestly thought it was me. But what really started to creep me out was when the changes to the painting made it look like me. One day I woke up and walked out to a creepy, impressionistic portrait of myself and decided enough was enough. I took the painting off the wall, dragged it downstairs to the dumpster, and tossed it in. Good riddance. But when I came home from work, it was back on its place on the wall. I was beginning to question my sanity. I tossed it out again, but the next morning when I woke up, it was back on the wall, and its lip was curled, like it was smiling. I had to go to work, and since I didn't want to run down to the dumpster again, I just turned it around, so it was facing the wall. At least that way it couldn't watch me. When I came home from work, I considered trying to throw it away one more time, or burn it. But I was exhausted after a long day, and since it was still facing the wall, its eyes no longer following me, I left it there and had dinner, and spent the evening scrolling through images of exotic plants. My newest fixation. Decided I would deal with the creepy cursed thing in the morning. I did notice, though, as I was getting ready for bed, that it was crooked. I straightened it on the wall and went to bed. In the middle of the night, I was woken by a loud crash. When I rushed out to see what had caused it, I found that the painting had fallen from the wall. Its frame was cracked. Frowning, I nudged it with my toe. Flipped it over. The canvas on the other side was torn and empty. Completely empty. There was no figure in the painting. And suddenly I had that feeling again, so strong. That feeling of eyes. I backed to the corner of the living room, scanning all corners of my apartment. The sofa, the table, the kitchen area across the open bar, the windows. Where were the eyes watching me from? Where? I was still standing there with my heart hammering like I was about to go into cardiac arrest, looking in disbelief at the broken painting and wondering what was going on when, tum, 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 this patter of footsteps and a click. My bedroom door had just closed. Immediately I called the police to report an intruder, but while I was on the phone with the dispatcher, trying not to sound insane, while I described the painting and the figure that was missing from it, suddenly it struck me that this might be one more part of the prank. That one of my friends, the one who might have been making alterations to the painting, could have snuck in to make some final adjustments, and maybe after they accidentally knocked the painting off the wall and caused the crash, they ran into my room to hide from me. Not entirely plausible, but then neither were the fears I was babbling to this 911 operator. She assured me they'd send someone out. I think she assumed I was high as a kite, but also that it was better to be safe than sorry. Or maybe she just thought I needed a wellness check. I'd have thought so too, after being on that call with me. While waiting for their arrival, in case it was a prank, I steeled myself and went to the bedroom door. Then, just to be on the safe side, I grabbed a kitchen knife. A knife I swore I wouldn't use unless I knew for sure it wasn't one of my friends. And then I went back to the bedroom door, shoved it open, and brandished the knife while yelling. Standing next to my bed was my reflection. No, not my reflection, but that's what it looked like. It was me, but the hair was messier, like the brushstrokes weren't quite finished, and the clothes were not quite right. Almost a strange mix of everything I wore all put together, like the painter couldn't decide on which outfit, so went with them all. But the smile was sharp enough, as were the eyes, and the not-me looked at me and raised its hand. In that hand, it held a painted version of my knife. Shit, I gasped. Shit. Its lips imitated. I don't know which of us lunged first. Probably the painted me, real me, was just standing there in shock. Next thing I knew, I felt the thunk of an impact in my stomach. And then, I don't even know how to describe. The painted knife handle was sticking out of me, and where the blade entered the skin, paint flecked away instead of blood. Instinct kicked in, and I fought like a wild cat, slashing and stabbing, dragging my knife through that other me in a slicing motion. Again and again. The other me opened its mouth in a scream, but all I heard was the ragged sound of canvas ripping. It made a final effort to cut through me. But then, my last slice tore it in two. It went limp, only a ragged piece of canvas. I was bleeding from a deep gash in my belly. I believe I lost consciousness. Paramedics later told me they'd found me on the floor, bleeding from a knife wound. Draped over me was a canvas that I'd apparently cut free from the broken frame. They made me get a psych eval. You see, there was no evidence of anyone else in my apartment. The authorities believed that I got angry at the painting, tore it apart, and somehow accidentally stabbed myself in my frenzy. When I finally returned home, the painting, the broken frame, and what was left of the canvas were gone. Not a trace of them, not a scrap. And I've been wondering ever since, what would have happened if I hadn't woken up? Was it going to kill me? Or was it going to somehow put me in the painting and perhaps take my place? I'll never know, because the painting's gone. Gone. From my life, at least. But here's the thing. One of my friends sent me a link recently. Told me they stumbled across it on an art website. The painting is back up on sale. For the love of God, do not buy. Story number 8. Background. A few villages over from where I live there is a country park. The country park during World War II actually had an extensive network of ammunition factories and railways. They were put here to be concealed from German bombers. Currently, most of the buildings are just scattered bricks buried in bush. All that I've found remaining are the odd railway track, air raid bunkers, and an old railway station. Just to preface this, in my country, the wildlife is basically harmless. Largest animal you'd find is a horse. This event occurred at the middle of June. A couple of friends and myself decided to sneak into the park at night and camp there. It was a celebration for a private event. As we snuck into the car park at the side of the park, there were no cars, and the park rangers had left to go to sleep. Eventually, going out this night would be a poor decision because of the bad weather. We started packing our belongings back into our bags to find an abandoned building to take shelter from the rain in. At this point, it was the early morning of 12 a.m., and it was pitch black, with heavy rain pouring down. Finding the nearest building in the forest was the old train station. It had big interlocking fencing put up because it was considered derelict and dangerous structurally. Obviously, we went in anyway and scraped past the gap in the fence, releasing a loud screech from the rubbing metal. We quickly headed further inside the small structure and into the secret shaft that led into the raid bunker. And soon, we went to sleep. Around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. About an hour later, we woke up to the sound of the same metal screech from earlier. We looked around at Yakular and did a head count. All 6 of us were present, so we quickly shut all our lights off. For about 3 minutes, we didn't hear anything, until whoever was walking above us got closer. The sound of wet footsteps above us became louder, but still relatively faint. It didn't sound like normal shoe footsteps, though. We all sat there silently as the footsteps stopped right near the entrance to the bunker. There was no light from the entrance. We looked at each other in the dark as we realized that whoever had come up there had no torch with them. The footsteps didn't continue, assuming whoever was up there was still there. We waited until they left. After what had felt like an eternity, the footsteps picked back up, heading away from our direction. Hearing the sweet sound of the metal screeching as they left, we decided to stay as we thought that it may have been a park ranger's trying to sneak up on us without his lights on purpose, and we didn't want to get caught. We got some shut-eye until our alarms woke us at 6 to leave, before the rangers arrive on their 8 a.m. shift. Crawling out of the hole and into the summer morning, we came across our footprints from last night. However, there were an extra set of footprints of the person that followed us in the previous night. They were barefooted. We quickly packed up our stuff and left quickly out of childish paranoia. Nothing else happened to us that morning. You survived, for now, but the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.